So let's talk a little bit about value stream mapping, the what and the why. So at the end of the day, it's about lean, right? For those of you that have heard me speak or maybe been in a class with me, you know that I feel very passionately that to scale successfully and sustainably and profitably inside an enterprise or government program, Scrum is not enough, right? You need some lean with your agile. And so when we talk about lean, we're really talking about, the roots in the Toyota production system with Takahashi Ono, right? Where we want to look at, what is value, right? And the first thing we have to do is what's the value from the standpoint of the end customer, right? And then what are all those steps in the value stream for each product family? And then how do we actually create that flow, right? And then finally, can we create a pull system to bring that to pull to that next upstream system, upstream step in the system, and does it actually work, right? That percent complete and accurate. And then that relentless focus on improvement, Kaizen, that seeking of perfection. And so it really is about lean. And everything we talk about here is taking that lean thinking mindset into play. And now, when you ask yourself, what's a value stream? This is one of those terms that's used all over the place. So inside your context, if you're working at a company, a leader in a company, a product manager, an SPC, what does a value stream mean to them today? You may want to level set on that because it's not often the same thing. Sometimes a value stream can be some VP's organization, right? And so value streams are not processes. It's a set of steps, right? From the customer's initial request to the customer's realization of value. And inside those steps, there's some that are value added and there's some that aren't value added. And of those that aren't value added, some of them are necessary and some of them aren't necessary. And that question about, is it necessary or not? Oftentimes comes back to that lean agile mindset. And are you willing to embrace some of these new values and principles as you find a way of working that optimizes for flow? Now, the term value stream mapping, right? There's a book, Value Stream Mapping by Karen Martin and Mike Osterling, that explains the definition that Karen and Mike put in their book is value stream maps offer holistic view of how work flows through the entire system. And so when we think about this, if we want to optimize the flow of value to our customers, then we need to optimize the system. Now, if you look at it, there may be some Lean Six Sigma green belts and black belts out there. I'll tell you that what I've not personally been involved in that. I actually quit a job over Minitab 12, but separate topic, separate story for another day. Anyway, my point on this, if you look at this, the value versus the delay or the waste there. And in this model here, if you were to say, you know what, our developers, man, it takes them 2 days to dev a fix and test it. We need to hire better developers. In fact, let's hire more developers. So now we get the dev and the fixes down to 1 day. Does that make a massive difference on your flow? Or would this, figuring out why it takes 3 days to go from the support team to the dev triage, why we have this, maybe that's a place you can explore. Or here, right? The adding to the queue and when it actually gets done takes a week. So there's other places where you can look at that. And so when we think about why value stream mapping, first off, it visualizes the work. Eric's going to talk a little bit about Kanban, which is a Japanese word for visual card. And really, you want to make all the work visible. To understand the steps, you need to know the steps, and you map those out. It creates transparency. You want to measure and optimize that flow of value, and then have opportunities for relentless improvement. The last bullet point on here is one that people will say, well, how does value stream mapping give us alignment? Well, what I've learned over the years is that it's actually one of the best byproducts you get. When you get a group of individuals from product, from business, from compliance, from legal, from HR, from operations, from development, all together in a room, they all have different perspectives on how value flows and what value is and all this stuff. So the act of going through and doing this facilitated event, whether it's part of scaled agile implementation or if it's just something where you're going in to target a specific topic, it creates alignment. It's a byproduct. And the technique I'll show you at the end of this webinar will kind of show you those diverge and converge points where alignment is created. All right, so let's talk a little bit about traditional value stream mapping. This is where it's really about, these are the steps, right? Items flow through the value stream, in manufacturing, materials of the items, in design and development, materials, designs of the items, in service and an external customer's need is the item, right? If it's an internal thing, it's an administration thing, internal customer needs are the item. So it can be any of these things, right? And so I'm not going to get into some of the things like tact time, but if you take a deeper dive or you read some of the Six Sigma stuff, you'll find that Lean Six Sigma gets into some of this. And you might have experience with this idea of a value stream map from a Six Sigma perspective, right? And so this is an example of a value stream map, and it kind of shows you the touch time versus the lead time for something. Now, one of the cool things you can do, and I definitely weave this into the way I approach lean portfolio management, is to look at value stream mapping and these types of activities, both from a current state as well as from a future state. So you know where you are today and you know where you want to go. Well, the opportunities exist between those two, right? So if we're looking at a current state portfolio canvas for where you're investing today and where you're investing in the future, we do the same kind of thing. So you want that current versus future state. Now, let's talk about a quick collaborative approach. So I've had a lot of experience both with SAFe and not with SAFe. I'll tell you that SAFe is my preferred vehicle to help somebody head towards business agility and achieve it. And this is a technique that I've leveraged at customers that had an experience with SAFe that led them to say no more SAFe. At the end of the day, what I've learned over the years is that whether you call it SAFe or you call it something else, at the end of the day, it's about lean, agile, and flow, right? And so this is an example of how you might get alignment. So here's let me frame up the story for you here, right? So I was working with a personal investments firm, and they basically said, "Hey, Phil, it's getting close to the holidays. The leadership team on the transformation is taking vacation. Lots of people on vacations. Hey, after the first of the year, can you go by Research Triangle Park and help them? There's a development shop there that is just horrible. It takes them months to do a personalization tag, right? And so the reputation among the senior executives was that, look, that group is horrible because they take so long. And so what I found is that I want to understand what it is they're trying to do and what the purpose is, what problem they're trying to solve, what keeps them up at night, what outcome they're pursuing, whatever you might want to think about, right? And then take some action and then go through and repeat if needed. So I'm sent out here to RTP. I start talking to people. And what I realize is I'm seeing a trend here, right? And as I talk to people that, you know what, maybe the problem is not in the skills of their developers. That may not be the easiest problem to solve or even the largest problem. So what we did is we got together in a room, right? And we actually just mapped it out. Now, this is on a big conference table, and these are sticky notes, and I've intentionally made it a little bit harder to read, so don't squint to try and see all these. But when you look at this, what's the first thing you notice? Where are most of the stickies? Where's most of the content on this? It's in that first quadrant. And the second most is in this middle quadrant, and the third is over here. What I asked people to do was to say, what are all the things that need to happen from the time a personalization request comes in to when the customer's happily using that new personalized content? And what we found is that there's a lot of stuff up front before development even starts. There's a spot right here where it's ready. This is where the actual people who are doing the building of that solution are going to get involved. And this over here is getting it out the door. And so what we did is we went through, and part of flow is understanding the steps, but you also have to have some way of measuring. Well, how do we go back in time? Well, in this case, I'm working with a PMO, and guess what? There's paper trails and emails and meeting invites and things like that. So we were able to go out and do swarm and cluster. In the room, we took about an hour and a half and mapped out all on these whiteboard walls and through sticky notes. Hey, this request came in on 11/22, and development started on 2/22. 3 months before development even started. And this is basically looking at meetings that were rescheduled and all sorts of stuff. And so what we found is that our hypothesis was, look, we think that if we can understand and measure the steps required to get through the intake process, we can get some accelerated value delivery, right? And we'll know that when we see the total lead time from funnel to backlog go down, we'll know we've made some, we validated that. And so we looked at all the things that need to happen, right? What are all those steps in the flow of getting to ready, as we ended up calling it? And who needs to be involved? The color coding you see here is basically different parts of the organization, dev. They had a BA, we had a BA in the room, we had an executive in the room, we had a person from compliance. They were all throwing those things on the wall in those steps they need to have. So we mapped out their flow after having that initial conversation. Now, here's the cool thing. I ended up going back to New England, right, after spending just a couple of weeks with this awesome guy named Steven, who I mentored in these techniques. And about a year later, year and a half later, he supplied me with this data right here. And this was just, it was so awesome. This is an example of the power of value stream mapping, even when applied collaboratively and in a way that's not traditional, right? He shared with me that, look, what we did was we reduced it down from 3 months, you know, from 2 or 3 months up front to down to less than 30 days up front. A little side note here. The escalation meetings were occurring at so many different levels that at the end of the day, when we made the data visible to the senior execs, they found for themselves, hey, what's this delay here in waiting for the business? Oh gosh, we can fix that 2-month delay with some conversations. And they did. And shortening the getting to ready cycle allowed them to invest in taking value stream mapping to their way of actually doing development and eventually to their way of releasing. And it got it down from 3 to 6 months for this down to 2 to 14 days. And this is a story that for me as an outside person, I love getting these kind of one-offs. Someone will ping me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email. Hey, you wouldn't believe what we've done now. This is one of those things, and it's pretty awesome success story. But think about that. A 2 or 3 week investment in doing a little bit of research, getting people together to talk through this and apply this can result in some pretty significant change. All right. So with that said, I want to shift gears here a little bit and look at scale, right? So we've got Bryan here who's going to walk us through value streams in SAFe and what exactly that means.
Hey, thank you, Phil. So yeah, like Phil said, we're going to look at organizing around value now, and we're going to look at value streams within the Scaled Agile framework. Next, please. So value stream identification is it's one of the core techniques that we use, or that an organization can use on its path towards achieving business agility. On the right-hand side of this graphic here, we see the hierarchy that many of us are used to. That hierarchy provides stability to the organization. It helps keep the lights on in general, helps make sure people get paid, right? But on the left here, we see this is a value stream network, and they are designed for the speed of innovation here. So value stream identification is a process that allows us to understand the flow of what the flow of value looks like for our organizations. Next, Phil. Thank you. So there are 2 different types of value streams within SAFe. We have the operational value stream, which is the flow of value through the organization, starting with a trigger and concluding at value being delivered. We then also have the development value streams, which includes the steps and the people that are needed to define, build, test, release, and even operate the solutions that support the operational value stream. In this example, that would be like your core banking application here, the credit scoring system. So starting with operational value streams here, there are 4 common patterns within SAFe. So the first one here is the fulfillment operational value stream, which is used to process a request from need identified all the way to remittance. We look at the manufacturing operational value stream, which contains the steps needed to take a raw material and turn it into a physical product like a phone or a vehicle. Software product development value streams, or software product value streams, focus on creating and supporting SaaS products, mobile applications, things like that. And the final one here, the supporting operational value stream, that supports the business operations for one or more of the business operational value streams here. And so an example of that would be something like it's the end-to-end flow for hire to retire, for example, that flow. Next, please. So this is an example of the fulfillment of a value stream, operational value stream. We see the steps a request takes to get from a customer need all the way to value being delivered. And a few things to call out here is that graphic that we see, that figure we see that has the code on and has the tie, that represents our customer here. And we get to see at what points during this flow does the customer have direct input to the value stream. The gray figures above, they signify the individuals who support and work at each one of these value stream steps here, such as sales, marketing, contracting, legal, folks like that. So development value streams. And so the development value stream is we touched on this a little bit before, but it's all the steps, it's the people, it's the systems, it's the activities that are needed to make any changes to those operational value stream systems and solutions. And so again, this is the people who take a feature request or a change to one of those operational value stream solutions, and they define, build, validate, release, support the solutions that enable the operational value stream. So here's an example of a software product development value stream. And so this is the operational and development, and this graphic shows the interconnection between the operational value stream and the development value streams. So in this example, this is showing us that for this single operational value stream for an enterprise, there are 3 distinct development value streams that build and support the solutions of the operational value stream. We have one of the development value streams that focuses on the customer interfaces. We have another one here that focuses on the internal systems being used by the people in the operational value stream. And then the final focuses on building and supporting the actual software product itself.
Notice the size difference between these. You may have larger development value streams that take hundreds of people to deliver, and smaller ones that may be 50 to 120 people.
Yep, good call out there. So this here shows us an example of what this looks like in the real world, right? So on the right-hand side, that is actually an in-person value stream identification workshop that was done. On the left side here, this is the remote value stream identification workshop. And something to call out here is that remotely, we have found these to be every bit as effective as in person now, using the correct tooling and having the right people involved. And so they're both very efficient at being able to align people as to what the flow of value looks like in an organization. And the final part here we look at is, when might we actually do a value stream identification workshop? Well, there are 2 specific spots to call out here while going through the implementation roadmap. The first is starting with identifying value streams and arts to ensure that we are organized around value whenever we're launching an agile release train. The second place for the identification workshop would be if we already have an agile release train going. As we look to scale to more areas of the organizations, we look at revisiting this value stream identification workshop as an opportunity to realign and reassess how we are organized as an organization. And so with that, we've taken a moment to understand how to identify value streams. Eric OBrien is going to take us through optimizing those value streams in the pipelines. Eric?
Thank you, Brian. So you heard Brian give us a view on value streams and say, and now we're going to talk about how do we optimize value streams? What are the things we could do? And we're going to mainly talk about DevOps and mapping your pipeline. When we look at DevOps and mapping your pipeline, next slide, please. Here, let's look at DevOps first. So DevOps, we're really talking about bridging this gap between development and operations. There's typically this wall of confusion. And we can apply this thing known as Calmer. It's an approach that we look at culture, for example. We create a shared responsibility between development and operations. We consider that, hey, the things we're building in development, operations has to support those. Let's include those in the conversation. We look at automation, reducing that lead time and processing time for that faster feedback. We know that faster feedback loops allow us to pivot and get us that business agility so we can win in the market. Looking at lean flow here, by limiting work in progress, reducing batch size, we get a higher throughput. That allows us to go fast, and that's what we want to do. We want to go fast. By measuring the flow of value, when we're looking in here at measuring everything, we could truly understand our system's current state and that target visionary state we're trying to get to. Last, by making recovery easy for our systems, and deploying solutions that are low risk, we can encourage an experimentation environment where experiments are safe to do. We want to create an environment of safety where we want to try new things. Value streams and safe, Bryan talked about. The continuous delivery pipeline, as we see here on top of that value stream, represents the workflow, activities, and automation needed to deliver that functionality from concept to cash, to get that idea on demand and that value to the market. Now let's talk about optimizing that continuous delivery pipeline with the value streams that Bryan talked about. Next slide, please. So the first thing we can do is we can map it. We understand that concepts are really difficult. Visualizing, mapping things make complicated topics easier to understand, creates a shared understanding. So before we can optimize our pipeline, we need to map it. Mapping the pipeline gives this visual picture. This picture of the process time. How long do things actually take to do? The lead time. What are those handoffs? How long does it take for that handoff to go to the next handoff? Remember, Phil talked about that. Do we focus on the simple process or that 3 days that we wait? Waiting is what's going to prevent us from winning in the market. And then the quality of work here. Is quality being progressively moved down that value stream as we go down the pipeline? Or is our work going back? Is there constantly defect? Do we need to invest in building in quality into our systems? So using this map, we can understand the flow of the systems and apply new ways of work to deliver values to our customers. Next slide, please. So one way we can do this is by creating a culture of transparency. We can look deep into what we see in here. We can be curious, ask questions without judgment. We can make all invisible work visible, and I'm going to tell you one way we can do that. We can express openness, share the work we're doing, have a shared understanding. Hey, this is what we're doing over here, and this is what you're doing. Let's talk about what does that mean and share what we're intending to do. What is the intent? By valuing our conversations over our tools. Yes, there are a lot of tools out there, especially in the virtual world that we're in, but those conversations are still important. That's how we get understanding, is through communicating with each other. And by expressing lean agile leadership as servant leaders. So we combine transparency with something called Kanban that Phil kind of hinted at. And just remember that Kanban was developed by Tachi Oji. Phil mentioned him when he talked about him in lean. He was an industrial engineer at Toyota. And it really helps us visualize the work, maximize efficiency, and improve continuously. Next slide, please. So with Kanban, it's all about flow. We don't want things to get stuck. We can optimize the flow. We can look for work is getting backed up. Hey, there's a traffic jam over here, or hey, there's a pileup over here. We can fix those things. We can look for lines. Where are lines forming? If there's a line forming here, maybe we can swarm. Maybe we can go there and meet those needs of those customers sooner. Where are those things forming? We know that lines, people don't like waiting in lines. We want we want fast pass. We want things to move fast. And then we can measure the lead time and the process time. Find those handoffs once again and reduce them. Reducing those handoffs will really get us that time to market so we can be innovative and quick and fast. Next slide, please. So a little bit about Kanban. Quote something that Phil said, visual card. Remember that? We talked about that? Your Kanban board is this visual source of information. It makes that invisible work visible for our product development, for just the work we're doing. It's the most transparent way we can show what the work we're doing is. So when we look at it, does it have all the work visible? Does it represent time? Because without time here, we don't know what the current state of the system is. Are the work in progress limits understood? Do we know if work's getting backed up? Once again, is there a queue forming, a line forming somewhere? And is everyone able to find it? Transparency again. Is everyone able to find the big visual information radiator of all the work we're doing? So by combining transparency with visual information radiator, now what can we do to invest in making and optimizing this pipeline? What can we do now? We have transparency, we have the visual information radiator, we have this lean, we have concept of Kanban, but what can we actually do to invest now into making that pipeline optimized and getting that faster, go fast? Next slide, please. We can invest in something called enablers. Enablers are those activities that extend what's called the architectural runway. They provide those business functionalities. So when we look at these, enablers are really ways for us to look at ways to explore things. Maybe let's try this and experiment. Let's build out the architecture. Let's support business. This architecture is going to support this future business functionality. Let's build out the better infrastructure. Or let's optimize the pipeline for quality. That percent complete and accurate that we were talking about in the value stream map. How do we increase that so that the work is actually higher quality and we built in quality? Using enablers is that conversation, that card for a conversation. It facilitates that discussion with our business owners, our product management, our product owners, and architects to actually say, let's put capacity. Let's have our teams work on this and align it against business work. And then let's order that in the backlog and make an economic decision on it. So what I'm trying to say in the end, the next slide, please, Phil, is that when we look at applying DevOps and optimizing our value stream, the way to DevOps, the way to do this is really we're asking to create new habits for transparency, flow, and having economic decisions over capacity, celebrating those success and those new habits pull non-believers into believers. And then the last part is remember that culture is going to be the last thing to change. So Phil shows you value stream mapping. Bryan shows you what value streams in Safe are. And I showed you how you can optimize the value stream and continuous delivery pipeline. The value stream and identification workshop is one of the most critical Safe workshops in the Safe implementation. So before we get to the Q&A, Phil here is going to give you a collaborative design thinking approach to doing this.
Thanks, Eric. All right. So, I love design thinking. I was introduced to it back working with the innovation center at a big company, and it fascinated me to have some names for things that organically were happening. This is definitely not a purist approach to design thinking. When you think about it at its basic concept, it's about diverging and converging, right? And so, the way that I approach and the people that I mentor, both internal change agents and external change agents and people here at Applied Frameworks, it's really about applying this idea of that diverge and converge. It gives you alignment occurs, as I mentioned earlier, alignment occurs as you do this. And so there's a couple places where I absolutely use this in these types of events that are related to the flow of value. The picture in the top left is what I'm going to walk you through step by step. The bottom right, Diego had a question, and I'll see if we can make time to show you a little bit more on that. But this is a design thinking approach to getting going with lean portfolio management, which is another hot topic that we may have a webinar on someday. But all right, let me switch over here. There was a question in chat regarding, what tools we recommend. So at Applied Frameworks, we don't have a lot of tool partnerships where we're going to sell you a tool kind of thing. For us specifically, we want to try and maintain tool agnostic. There's tools that we use internally. I've personally done what I'm about to show you in Safe Collaborate, which is Scaled Agile's tool that's part of their awesome community platform, in Mural, in Miro, which is what I'm going to use today to show you, and my understanding that there's other tools out there. Now, I prefer Collaborate, Miro, and Mural specifically because you can have templates. So what I'm showing you here is something that I ported from Mural because I've done this a couple of years, a few years ago, into Miro because that's what we use at Applied Frameworks right now internally. And I can take this, and if we have a customer, we've got a value stream workshop coming up or something, or I'm going to help an SPC internally help them learn how to do this. I can clone this. So that's what differentiates this from some of the whiteboard functionality you might get as part of your Teams tool or something like that. And so it definitely, the ability for templates, it saves a whole bunch of time. All right, so let's talk about this. Use case here, let's say we're working with a North American region of a payment processing company, for example, right? And we've got their problem to solve is that they've been delivering their solution in 3 different ways around 3 different countries. And now they have to come together and deliver as a single North American region. So we want to understand how value flows. We want to get the perspective from the individuals in Mexico and Central America. We want to get the perspective of the individuals in the US and the perspective of the individuals in Canada, so that we have a better way of looking at this. So we're going to pull together executives, product management, architecture, BAs if they have them, potentially, a finance person, marketing person, et cetera, and we're going to put them into cross-functional groups and break out. And so a little Kanban for our work. All right, so first activity, and by the way, this is, if you're an SPC, a Safe Program Consultant, there's about 15, 20,000 of them around the globe. It's that highest level certification you can go out and get today. It doesn't require a multi-year journey, as Bryan, I mentioned about Bryan, but SPCs have access to the toolkits that allow you to do this, that have the templates that I'm going to show you, some of the templates I'm going to show you here. And so essentially what we're doing is we're going to break that group of, say, 18 people up into 3 groups of 6, right? And they're going to come up with these questions together in that small breakout group, right? What are the silos in our organization? So we have 3 groups that go out and do that. They come back together again. They demo what they came up with to the whole group. So they've diverged, and now they're going to converge. And what we come up with is, as a group of 18 people, what are those silos that have the highest level impact on the flow of value in our organization, right? And then we go through and we map this out step by step, right? What's the operational value stream? How do we define our operational value stream, as Bryan mentioned earlier? And if there is a single one we come up with, then we go with that. If for some reason, hey, you know what, we've actually got 2 we're going to explore, so we just simply would pop that in there and we're going to run with 2. So I don't want you to think that this is something where you always come out with just one. You might find that in those alignment conversations, when you share what you came up with as a group, you came up with different stuff. And so it's really about cast the wide net, hone in and align, cast the wide net, hone in and align. All right. So we go through and do that. And ultimately, we're going to get 3 or 4 different perspectives on the way value flows. There was a question in chat regarding what these boxes mean. So when you're doing a safe value stream and identification workshop, you're going to, first off, identify what happens between that triggering event, the customer needs something, right? And the value's been delivered to the customer. What are those steps in your operational value stream? If you're out there and you've done some great product management work and you're in touch with your market and market segmentation, you've developed some personas, and you've got customer journey maps, oftentimes your customer journey map and your operational value stream kind of one and the same. So that's a great starting point if you've got that. Then we're going to figure out, this is where SAFE gets a little bit different than traditional value stream mapping, in that we know the flow of value for customers. But now, what solutions, what are these systems, applications, and things, these solutions that we design, build, test, and deploy that actually enable this operational value stream? That's what those yellow boxes are for those solutions or services or applications, depending, right? Then we say, for any given solution, who are the people that design, build, test, deploy, release, operate that particular solution? And so that allows us to map it out. And eventually we'll draw circles around this to figure out what does that development value stream look like? And so this is probably one of the most powerful parts of the value stream identification workshop, is the conversations that happen in front of this canvas. I'm actually a big fan of doing this remotely. I'll tell you that I will hopefully never have to experience a collaborative event where part of the people are in the room and part of the people are not, right? So for me, I can do this all day in person. I can do this all day completely remote, but when you start mixing the two, it gets tough. And I'm just giving you a tip there, right? So now eventually we're going to come up with what that value stream looks like for this. And now we've got, when you have 3 different groups or 4 different groups or 5 different groups coming up with the same thing, it's probably stickier. One of the big challenges that I find with SPCs that have done this is that they'll go take SAFE training, they'll go back to their home base, and they'll create a PowerPoint that says what all their value streams are. That's not what it's all about. This is about concurrent collaboration to get alignment on how value flows through your organization. And then with SAFE's workshop, there's a canvas. Once again, I'm a huge fan of canvases because as you do this collaboratively, you get alignment, and you end up with understanding, hey, what are those, what is that, where do we have the best chance of having great success with our first agile release train?